So, Samantha Bee, the stupefyingly unfunny comedian behind the show Full Frontal, fucked up the other day. Bee, who, much like Stephen Colbert and Trevor Noah, made a career from mocking George Bush, who deserved mockery, and then sitting on a pedestal above all the peon American masses, taking potshots at conservatives and failing to practice or maintain any sort of journalistic integrity or even effort in her work for 8 years, under the safety of King O'Bummer. By that I mean, Bee and her ilk have been in a position to avoid any and all actual hard investigation into any of the topics they've covered over the last 8 years because of their political leanings, which allowed them to conveniently ignore any and all negatives regarding Obama and just crack jokes at whatever simple and unnuanced topic floats across their desk. This is precisely why so many people are so outraged when Trump does the same exact things that Obama did, like the temporary travel ban or barring certain news outlets from a gaggle, because these self-proclaimed comedians who entertain the millennial masses never reported on it, and they never reported on it because it just didn't suit their narrative. Before I go further into detail about how Samantha Bee fucked up, I want to point out that in a rare display of self-awareness, even the New York Times suggested that this garish, brass, and insipid humor of Bee and others in her sphere of supposed comedic political commentators was destroying Clinton's chances at the election by driving away moderates through their incessant mockery of everything regarding the right, including the average American people. Yeah, the basket of deplorables. The article notes Trump's appearance on Jimmy Fallon's show, where Fallon rustled Trump's hair, ooh as shit senpai, as an example of what these entertainers should be doing, which is representing and mocking both sides. Not that Fallon's that great at it either, but holy hell, at the time that this happened, the very idea that a liberal comedian would even talk to Trump was surely bizarre. By the way, Bee also claims to be an independent who mocks both sides.
Would you say you're a Democrat or Republican or neither?
I would say, I think my leanings are very clear from the show, but I actually prefer to think of myself in a more independent way.
Why?
Because
Why not just embrace?
I do embrace it. I'm excited for Hillary. I don't think there's any question about it. I like to be able to make jokes about both sides of the aisle, so I like to give myself a little freedom.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, sure. What a fair and balanced person I'm sure you are. Check out her fairly hilarious take on the alt-right to see just how fair and unbiased and centrist she is.
The alt is short for alternative, and I know alternative is almost a meaningless term these days. There are so many subgenres: clan rock, Nazi pop, white noise, Jew-gaze. Oh sure, I went to a few shows in my younger days. Basically, alt-right is a big tent, or rather a big rock, under which creeps a diverse assortment of paleo-conservatives, men's rights misogynists, right-wing populists, anti-PC crusaders, Jew-baiters, white ethno-nationalists, southern secessionists, Islamophobes, Holocaust deniers, self-described satirists, trolls, doxers, cyberbullies, and good old-fashioned neo-Nazis. And Trump's current campaign commandant is the guy who feeds them and makes sure they can spread out enough not to drown in their own shit.
So yes, as we can see, regardless of her own denial, Bee has a definitive political agenda. Also, I remember when this video aired, none of us had seen some of these Pepes before, meaning Bee's staff actually made us new memes to spread around racism and bigotry with our cartoon frogs. Anyway, so what Bee did most recently, and this was not the first major fuck-up she's made, I suggest you watch Steven Crowder's video where he destroys one of her arguments about abortion for further listening or watching or whatever. But no, the other day, Bee covered CPAC, a conservative convention, in one of her little bits, or if you want to call it the sketch, I don't know. It's not funny, so I don't know what to call it. She pulls out several people at the convention and accuses them of having Nazi hair. First of all, what the fuck is Nazi hair? That's called an undercut, you mental toddler. Lots of people have been sporting that look for decades, and we'll go further into that later. But regardless of how retarded this Nazi hair claim is, here is where Bee really shot herself in the foot. The last man featured in this video does not have that hairstyle by choice, but rather because he has stage 4 terminal brain cancer and recently finished a round of chemotherapy. And do you want to know the real kicker? He's a registered Democrat. His name is Kyle Coddington, and he's a writer for a conservative and libertarian news outlet called The Outset. And he even tweeted a month before CPAC, which he stated in an interview he did with Fox News that he had long wanted to attend, that his hair does resemble that of Richard Spencer, but that it was a result of his cancer treatment. Yes, that's right. Bee's team could have easily looked this guy guy up and seen that a month ago he explained his hairstyle, yet they just could not be asked to do their fucking jobs because, like I said, they haven't done their jobs in 8 years. Kyle, his sister, another contributor at the outset, and several others tweeted at Full Frontal to remove the segment, which frankly, if not accusing Kyle of Nazism outright, at least implies it. The video was quickly taken down, and B/Full Frontal's Twitter account said this: "We deeply apologize for offending at that Kyle in our CPAC segment. We only learned of his condition today and have removed him from the piece." Does that sound like a very sincere apology to you? I mean, after all, what's the big deal? All she did was associate this guy with a Nazi party. It's not as if leftists like Samantha Bee don't also think it's totally okay to punch or beat Nazis or anything, right? Anyway, if you thought that was a bullshit apology, you're not alone. Here is Kyle's take on the tweet.
I'd say that it is kind of half apology. I would say the effects of this go much further than just insulting me and the illness itself. It's just inconsiderate and very unprofessional to, you know, lump together anyone with a certain hairstyle or just the way they look. Like I said, it's unprofessional, it's inconsiderate, and it goes beyond me.
I will at least say this for Full Frontal. They did donate $1,000 to Kyle's GoFundMe for his treatment the day after the clip went up. But sorry, at least in my opinion, that is far too little, far too late. And why is it far too little, far too late? Because as I alluded to, we live in a world where the left has decided without question, without doubt, without consideration, that it is okay to punch, beat, I don't know at this point, maybe even kill someone for their political beliefs. And you need look no further than the comments that these socialists and commies have been leaving on my Antifa video, which is exactly why I'm going to make another one soon about their favorite violent little Asian Yvette Fulacra, who for some reason is allowed to teach children. Look at this hysterical, irrational little bint. Anyway, so see how because I said I don't think people deserve to get punched unless they punch first? Their response is to castigate me and associate me with Nazism. Yeah, the ideology that in the very same breath they are claiming deserves death. Look, here's the thing, Antifa. Until Richard Spencer hurts anyone, you have no right to hurt him. You just don't. I mean, are we in fucking Minority Report? Or what? Is that what you want? You want to live in Minority Report, in Psychopaths. You want to live in a reality where thought crimes or pre-crimes are punishable by death? Do you not understand how dystopian that is? Really? Do you not? If these Antifa assholes had their way, they would just take up and run with Samantha Bee's condemnation of a guy like Kyle Coddington as a Nazi by virtue of his freaking hair, and would feel righteous and prideful as they beat him to death over a fucking haircut. That is why this is an issue, you communists, you leftists, because you want to beat Nazis, but you call everyone a Nazi, and engage in this constant attempted violence. Let me tell you something I've told you before. You will create Nazis by doing that, because that is exactly what radicalized the socialist workers in the Weimar Republic against the communists, who were run by, you guessed it, mostly Jews. And do you know what else a large number of Jews tended to run in pre-World War II Germany? Why, the cinema, and more importantly, newspapers. And during that time, there was a vast growing sentiment among the German people that the Nazi Party spoke out about regarding, which was that the news outlets had become completely and totally untrustworthy. Are you seeing a pattern here? Any similarities? Unless you really want Hitler 2.0, stop it. Because you are making history repeat itself. And I know I'm gonna catch flack for naming the Jew, but what the Jewish communists and what the commies in general were doing in pre-World War II Germany is the exact same shit the left is doing now and continuing to double down on. This is the behavior that turns an angry German boy into a furious German man, okay? So, back to Samantha Bee. Bee is fine with calling everyone with an undercut a Nazi. Even with the clip removed, I wouldn't be surprised if you see this come up in the future with people getting attacked or demonized over things as simple or innocuous as their hair or their clothes. That's the goal, I think. If the basic premise is that it's okay to punch Nazis, and then you make everyone a Nazi, like Sarah Silverman suggested, the ultimate answer is just engage in all-out warfare against everyone you don't like. Here's the problem though, leftists. You seem to keep forgetting who among us has the guns. Anyway, so yes, Samantha Bee, such a good liberal, calling out the evil Nazis and signaling her virtue to her lefty audience to show how progressive and accepting she is. Except, in June of 2016, Sammy came out against the rezoning of the school her children go to in New York City so that it would not include neighborhoods and areas that are predominantly black and impoverished. Yet, despite being in opposition to that rezoning, Bee stated, "To portray any opposition as classist or racist is as bad as it can get." That's very interesting, isn't it? Just like J.K. Rowling doesn't want to have a bunch of migrants in her house, but she'll sure virtue signal on Twitter about how everyone's supposed to welcome them with open arms, Sam appears a-okay to virtue signal about racism or classism or other shit like a good lefty goy, but when it comes to her own kids, she doesn't want them anywhere near Blackie. Yep, Samantha Zyklon Bee apparently isn't very fond of the blacks. This is like I've said before, this is why these affluent liberals can cry all day about migrants on Twitter, because they know they will never have to interact with one. Now, I'm gonna talk, hopefully briefly, knowing me it's not gonna be brief, about humor and its power to affect the human mind. For example, we know from research that appropriate humor that is related to the content helps improve student learning. That's Wanzer and Freimeyer 2009. That means that when your teacher makes appropriate and related jokes to the thing he or she is trying to teach you, you're more able to remember it. Typically because you will then associate the humor with the information to make it more salient in your mind. Again, cognitive heuristics, mental pathways. This is why people like Samantha Bee and Stephen Colbert and Trevor Noah are so dangerous, particularly for those who utilize their programs as their primary or maybe sole source of news. I mean, when I was a teenager, a young teenager at least, I'm pretty sure I got all of my news from Jon Stewart, and I don't think that's too odd for young people. But if you watch these shows, the structure of them are all very similar. Actually, they're all pretty much the same, and it goes like this. The host states some information, factual, accurate or not, and then makes a joke or cuts away to a bit, making the audience laugh and thereby now more likely to learn and acquit that information to memory. Here we can see the dark side of humor, or at least how it can be misused. This is a TEDx talk, and despite how awful we know TEDx is these days, from Sergej Popovich on what he calls laughtivism. Now, being someone who has studied humor on some level, I had never heard of this laughtivism thing until I saw this TED talk, so I was interested in it. In this talk, which we're not going to be looking at in its entirety, but which I suggest maybe you check out if you want something kind of terrifying about how humor can be co-opted and used to control people. This guy is, I believe, a self-described professional revolutionary who talks in this speech about how humor supposedly helped the Serbs overthrow President Milosevic and the Arab Spring. Anyway, I wanted to bring this up because he mentions these three things gives power to humor.
There are three main reasons why humor is such a powerful weapon in a social movement, especially when you're opposing the big guys, the tough guys, the dictators. First, humor melts fear. Fear is the air that dictators breathe. Without the fear, they cannot survive. There is nothing which breaks fear faster than a joke or a humor.
This first one is extremely true. Humor does melt away fear, and that's why all of us need humor. Hopefully, however, we'll use it to actually face our fears and not create them, like this guy apparently wants. So here's honestly one of the funniest studies I've ever read, and it's very appropriate because it was a study of humor. The premise of this research was to see how people would respond to jokes about a very serious topic, in this case, Hurricane Sandy. The research was conducted by examining how people responded to tweets from the Hurricane Sandy Twitter account, based temporally on how far away the hurricane was from the shore, and then several weeks later. And here's the cool shit. They found a sweet spot for humor between too soon and old news. Now, I know that kind of sounds like a no-brainer, but do you know how freaking cool it is to prove no-brainers with science and evidence? Well, maybe it's just me. Basically, people liked the tweets before the storm hit. Then they didn't like them when the storm was raging, and then they liked them again a little bit afterwards, but became bored over time. A sweet spot of humor in the face of a disaster. And we know humor helps people who are struggling with sadness and bereavement. That's Booth-Butterfield, Wanzer, Weil, and Krezmien 2014. When people had lost a loved one, humor helped them cope better. Again, a bit of a no-brainer, but the fact that we can show it definitively is what's important.
Second, humor makes your movement looking cool. And if your movement is cool and in, everybody wants to join. So your movement really grows.
Now, here he says humor makes you cool, and humor draws people to your group. Absolutely, yep. Do you want proof? Donald J. Trump. That's right, for me and many others, this all started out as a businessman's tweets making us chuckle. We, on the right, we have the best. the dankest, and the spiciest little memes. Honestly, the less pathetic attempts at humor over this last election cycle are just indicative of how true this guy's statement is. The good thing about the truthfulness of this is that unless the left abandons PC culture, they will never be capable of being funny ever again. In this interview that I brought up earlier, Samantha Bee talks about her use of salty language and how people only dislike it because she's a woman. Bitch, listen to my channel. I curse like a sailor, and I use profanity to help emphasize my points. And here's the difference, Sammy. I actually have points. I actually have data. I actually have science on my side. And hysterically, that is what the left continues to insist conservatives are incapable of using their understanding. Science. Look, I didn't really care for the video Po Josefson made claiming conservatism is the new counterculture. I just thought it was kind of silly. But he's not really wrong in that we're the funny ones now. And because we're funny, we're popular. It's not really that surprising though, is it? The left can't make fun of anything actually amusing for fear of being deemed a racist, sexist bigot. And so it goes around trying to tear down YouTubers for making Nazi jokes or Jew jokes. By the way, PewDiePie put up a new one. Oh my. So hilarious. Anyway, you disingenuous media whores, have you ever seen a Mel Brooks movie? How about you head over to H3H3 and check out some of their videos? The last time I checked, every freaking Jewish comic bases somewhere between like 1/4 and 3/4 of their material on the very fact that they're a Jew.
3. Humor and mocking creates a huge dilemma for your opponent. If they react, they will look stupid. If they don't react, other people will start mocking them as well.
This is the tactic the left has been using, and he's wrong, and it doesn't work when you're peddling nothing but lies as your movement. They did this to Trump. They made fun of him more and more and more, and all of us who could see through the layers of their lies and untruths and just bullshit could see how absurd it was. All it did was embolden those of us not on the left to stick behind our man. And how can you blame us? Have you seen how thick he is? I mean, goddamn, that ass. Holy shit, look at this. A conservative just made a joke about the president she voted for. That's why we won. Because we can take a fucking joke, and we can make fucking jokes. Your tactics aren't working anymore, leftists, because we can see through your horseshit. This guy talks a lot about the power of humor, and it is an extremely powerful concept. But when your jokes are all castrated by the rules and regulations of your social justice liberalism, you're never going to make anybody laugh. And if you manage to make them laugh, I guarantee that self-same joke will then be protested and despised for somehow being offensive. Because jokes, people, jokes are inherently offensive. If they're not offensive on some level, they're not funny. So here we are at the end of the video. For those of you who stuck around for the clickbait, I present to you definitive proof that I am and always have been a Nazi. Here it is! Yeah, check out my Nazi hair undercut. Oh, except wait, I have freaking warning colors, like your typical obnoxious SJW feminist. Oh, and I'm also throwing up an ISIS salute. Try to figure me out now, leftist. Actually, one of the reasons I dyed my hair this bright, obnoxious SJW color is because it really throws people off. No one would ever guess that deep down, I'm an ultimate shitlord. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. I'm Aiden Paladin, Altana Volt.